They rose from the ashes of Crusades. Humble monks turned warrior elites, sworn to protect the Holy Land, but rumored to guard something far more powerful. Beneath the ancient stones of Jerusalem, they may have uncovered secrets that could rewrite history, from forbidden relics to the birth of secret societies. Their legacy refuses to die. This isn't just a tale of knights. It's a code wrapped in mystery, betrayal, and a truth hidden in plain sight. If you think you know the Templars, think again. Subscribe to History Vault and unlock the secrets they tried to bury. The wind howled across the desolate plains of the Holy Land as dust swirled around the feet of armored men kneeling in prayer. Their swords, planted into the earth, stood like silent sentinels beside them. These were not ordinary knights. These were warrior monks, men who had taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, yet who bore steel and rode into battle with unflinching resolve. The year was 1119 A.D., and what began as a humble brotherhood of 9 knights guarding Christian pilgrims on the road to Jerusalem would soon erupt into one of the most powerful, mysterious, and feared organizations in history, the Knights Templar. In the aftermath of the First Crusade, Christian control had been established over Jerusalem, but the roads remained treacherous. Bandits, Muslim raiders, and lawlessness plagued the Holy Land. A French knight named Hugues de Payens approached King Baldwin II of Jerusalem with a bold offer. He and his companions would form a new order of warrior monks to protect pilgrims. With no wealth, no banners, and no land, they called themselves the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, later shortened to the Knights Templar. Their headquarters? The ruins of the ancient Temple of Solomon, a name that would forever enshroud their history in legend and mystery. At first, they were little more than a curiosity, an odd band of armed monks living by strict religious rule. They took vows more severe than most monastic orders. They were forbidden to gamble, to curse, to show pride. Their clothes were simple. Their hair was short. They slept fully clothed, with their swords by their sides. And yet, despite their humble beginnings, something about them struck fear into the hearts of their enemies and awe in the minds of the faithful. The Catholic Church saw in them a divine mission, and in 1129, the Council of Troyes officially recognized the order. From that moment, the Templars were unstoppable. They answered to no king, no kingdom. Their only master was the Pope himself. Donations poured in. Landowners across Europe gave them castles, farms, and forests. Nobles sent their sons to serve in their ranks. Kings entrusted them with treasures. Within decades, the Knights Templar had transformed into an international powerhouse. They fought bravely in the Crusades, their white mantles bearing the red cross becoming a symbol of fear on the battlefield. They were often placed at the front of armies, charging like phantoms against enemy lines, unwavering even in the face of death. Tales spread across Europe of Templars fighting until the last breath, refusing ransom, choosing martyrdom over capture. They were revered not only as warriors, but as saints of the sword. But it wasn't just their prowess in war that made them formidable. It was their mind for finance. As their influence grew, so did their ingenuity. Pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem could deposit money in Paris and withdraw an acre. The Templars had invented a primitive form of banking, centuries ahead of its time. Their temples became more secure than royal treasuries. Even monarchs entrusted them with vast sums, relying on the Templars to move money across borders during wars and diplomatic crises. While other Crusader orders like the Hospitallers focused on healing and the Teutonic Knights on politics, the Templars mastered a balance between battlefield valor and logistical brilliance. They built fortresses that seemed unbreachable, spanning from England to Cyprus. These were not mere outposts. They were strongholds of influence, storage for relics, and sometimes, according to rumor, hiding places for secret knowledge. People began to whisper that they had found something in Jerusalem, something hidden beneath the ruins of Solomon's temple. Perhaps it was treasure, or relics of Christ, or ancient documents from before the flood. No one knew for sure, but whatever it was, it elevated their status beyond mere knights. They became guardians, not only of roads and gold, but of something deeper, something sacred. Their initiation rites were secret, their power unchecked, their order immune to taxes and kings. And soon, they were richer than many monarchs. This did not go unnoticed. While some viewed them as divine protectors, others saw them as a threat. Their independence, their growing wealth, their secretive nature, it all brewed resentment in royal courts and cathedrals alike. But for a time, none could touch them. From the wind-swept deserts of the Levant to the stone cities of Europe, the Templars moved like shadows of destiny. Never fully seen, never fully understood. They stood at the center of wars, treaties, and faith itself, the sword in one hand, the cross in the other. In just under 2 centuries, they had risen from obscurity to become the embodiment of divine warfare and holy order. But as with all great powers forged in secrecy and blood, their time in the sun would not last. The world was changing. Enemies, once distant, were closing in, and behind palace doors and cathedral walls, jealous eyes watched, waiting for a moment to strike. The Templars had built a kingdom without borders, a faith without compromise, a power without equal. But the higher they rose, the deeper the fall would be, and somewhere beneath the ancient stones of Jerusalem, the secret they carried, the one they vowed to guard, waited untouched as the tides of history prepared to erase them. Jerusalem lay silent under the weight of centuries, its stones heavy with forgotten blood and whispered prayers. Beneath its ancient surface, tunnels coiled like the veins of a hidden world, dark, untouched, mysterious. Here, in the early 12th century, the newly founded Knights Templar established their headquarters atop the Temple Mount. But this was no random choice. This was sacred ground. It was once the site of Solomon's Temple, the very heart of biblical legend, a structure said to have housed the Ark of the Covenant, the 10 Commandments, and perhaps more than mortal eyes were meant to see. 9 knights lived here for nearly a decade in near total secrecy. They fought no wars. They gained no new lands. They took no wives and sired no children. Yet they stayed, working beneath the temple ruins, digging, always digging. What were they looking for? Or more disturbingly, what did they find? No records exist of what exactly transpired in those years. But something changed. These once obscure warriors began to rise rapidly in prestige. Their influence expanded like wildfire. Donations poured in from the nobility of Europe. The Pope gave them privileges no other group had ever received. They became untouchable. It was as if they had uncovered a truth so powerful. The church itself bowed before them. Legends would grow like vines over the centuries, weaving fantastic claims. Some said they found the Ark of the Covenant, the golden chest that brought victory to Israel and death to its enemies. Others whispered of the Holy Grail, not a cup of silver, but a vessel of eternal life, hidden away since the time of Christ. Still others suggested they uncovered ancient scrolls, writings predating Christianity, documents that challenged the very foundation of organized religion. One rumor told of a room sealed in stone, buried beneath the ruins, where an object pulsed with strange energy, guarded by ancient mechanisms only a chosen few could disable. The Templars, it was said, were not just warriors. They were now custodians of something unholy or divine. Whatever they had found gave them not only prestige, but also fearsome leverage over popes and kings alike. The question wasn't only about what they discovered, but why they kept it secret. If the relics of Christ had been unearthed, why were they not presented to the world? Why were they hidden, guarded, wrapped in silence? Some believed the truth was too dangerous, that it would shake the pillars of faith and throw kingdoms into chaos. Others believed it was not truth at all, but power in physical form, or perhaps knowledge that transcended the age. As years passed, the Templars began to incorporate strange symbols into their architecture. Churches and cathedrals funded by Templar gold bore carvings of figures unknown to Christian lore: stars, keys, serpents, roses. Spiral staircases descended into crypts sealed off to the public. Templar commanderies began appearing on powerful ley lines across Europe. The red cross on their cloaks, once a mark of holy sacrifice, became a symbol of something deeper, perhaps a cult. There are theories that their time beneath the Temple Mount awakened them to a far older tradition, one that predated Christianity and even Judaism. The mystery religions of Egypt, the wisdom of the Essenes, and the hidden codes of Pythagoras, all may have flowed into the vaults of the Templar mind. They emerged from Jerusalem not just as protectors of pilgrims, but as guardians of a secret history, Centuries later, in 1867, British explorers discovered strange subterranean vaults beneath the Temple Mount. They found narrow passages carved with odd precision, staircases that led nowhere, and chambers that had clearly been disturbed and then resealed. Some speculated these were the same tunnels the Templars had once explored. Were these the shadows of their silent quest? In modern times, researchers have pointed to the Copper Scroll, a real artifact discovered near the Dead Sea, that describes buried treasure and sacred items hidden in Jerusalem. Some believe the Templars knew of these scrolls or possessed others like them. They may have had access to secrets that even the Church dared not acknowledge. Perhaps that was why the Church later turned against them. It is not only religious relics that fuel the legend. Some scholars argue the Templars found records, genealogies tracing the bloodline of Christ, calling into question centuries of dogma. If Jesus had descendants, if his legacy was human rather than purely divine, then the implications were apocalyptic for church authority. Protecting such knowledge would become more than a mission. It would be a war of silence. And yet, nothing definitive was ever shown. The Templars never revealed what they had. They spoke of duty, of vows, of honor. But beneath their calm surface, behind their stone walls, the whispers continued. Their rapid rise, their strange rituals, their relentless secrecy. It all pointed to a truth buried with them, perhaps forever. By the time the Templars were brought to ruin, most of their documents had vanished. Their Grand Masters died under torture without revealing the secrets they held. Their castles were sacked, their treasuries emptied, but no Grail, no Ark, no scrolls were ever found. Only questions remained. Haunting, unanswerable questions that echo to this day beneath the sacred stones of Jerusalem. What did 9 poor knights find beneath Solomon's temple? Why did they protect it with such fury? And did they die with the knowledge, or pass it on to others sworn to keep it hidden? The Temple Mount still stands. The secrets may still lie beneath it, but those secrets, whatever they are, once changed the fate of an order, shook empires, and perhaps rewrote the truth of our civilization itself. Across the rolling hills of Europe, from the jagged cliffs of Scotland to the sunlit plains of Spain, a silent empire had taken root. It bore no crown, commanded no armies under a royal banner, and yet its power penetrated nearly every kingdom. This was not a traditional empire, but something far more elusive, more strategic, more enduring. It was a network of the Knights Templar, woven not in bloodlines, but in stone, secrecy, and symbols. While kings squabbled over land and thrones, the Templars built something else entirely, an invisible infrastructure of influence, wealth, and movement, stretching across continents like veins in a living body. Their fortresses were not merely military outposts. They were repositories of knowledge, vaults of gold, and centers of encrypted communication. In France alone, hundreds of Templar properties dotted the landscape. Farms, mills, vineyards, and commanderies. In England, they held lands from London to Yorkshire. In Portugal and Spain, they controlled frontier castles used in wars against the Moors. And in the East, they held strongholds in the Holy Land, stone giants built to withstand siege and time. Croc de Chevaliers, one of their most famous fortresses, was a marvel of military engineering, an impenetrable beast rising from the Syrian plains. But it wasn't the castles alone that made their network so powerful. It was a system. The Templars built something remarkably ahead of its time. A multinational enterprise, a military order fused with the discipline of monks and the ambition of merchants. With hundreds of preceptories across Europe, they created a logistical web through which information, wealth, and people could move swiftly and secretly. One of their greatest innovations was their system of financial transfers, a precursor to modern banking. A nobleman could deposit gold with the Templars in Paris, receive a coded parchment, travel to Jerusalem, and withdraw the equivalent amount in coin or goods. It was safe, efficient, and nearly impossible to rob. Even kings trusted them with state treasuries. Pilgrims traveling east would often carry no money at all, just Templar-issued letters of credit. And behind every transaction was a hidden code. The Templars had developed ciphers and signs. Some say even early encryption techniques, to safeguard their communications. Their red cross may have been public, but beneath the surface lay symbols carved into stone, etched into parchment, and whispered among the initiated. These weren't just decorative marks. They were maps, routes, warnings. A triangle carved near a gate might indicate a hidden chamber below. A rose above a chapel door might point to a relic buried beneath. Their network wasn't just about movement. It was about control. Templar roads were guarded. Their ships moved freely across ports, exempt from taxes and inspections. They built their own fleets, often faster and better armed than royal navies. Their galleys carried not only supplies but secrets, artifacts, messages, and perhaps the remnants of treasures never meant to be seen again. And while Europe's borders shifted constantly with war and dynastic marriage, the Templars moved unhindered, a sovereign force without territory. The influence of this network extended deep into society. Templar farms fed towns. Their mills controlled grain. Their tenants paid rent not to barons, but to the order. In many regions, they were more reliable and fairer than local rulers. Some peasants prayed for Templar protection rather than the king's justice. Monasteries admired their discipline. Merchants trusted their honor. Even criminals feared their wrath. In London, the Temple Church stood as a symbol of their might, its circular nave echoing the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Beneath its floors lay effigies of armored knights, stone guardians of a faith both known and hidden. Across the Channel in Paris, the temple complex became a fortress within the city, complete with towers, treasuries, and underground vaults. This was where the French crown would one day borrow and then betray. But the true strength of the Templar network was in its invisibility. Where other orders proclaimed their power, the Templars cloaked theirs in ritual and silence. They met in closed chapels. They trained in remote compounds. Their archives were private. Even the Templar rule, the code that governed their lives, was a secret document, revealed only to the initiated. The deeper one rose in the ranks, the more secrets they were entrusted with. This structure allowed the Templars to operate like a hidden government, advising kings, influencing papal decisions, and perhaps manipulating the outcome of wars. Some say they used coded messages to sway political alliances. Others believe they harbored spies in royal courts. Their fingers touched everything, yet left few fingerprints. Over time, rumors began to grow. People whispered that the Templars moved more than gold, that they transported sacred relics, forbidden texts, even powerful artifacts across their vast highways and sea routes. Some believe they maintained secret underground chambers where initiates were shown ancient knowledge. Others claimed they could disappear into their network, vanish from sight, never to be found again. And when persecution finally came, that network proved almost impossible to destroy. When King Philip of France ordered their arrest, many Templars vanished. Their castles were abandoned, their ships mysteriously sailed without a trace, their treasuries found empty. Some said they fled to Scotland, others to Portugal, where the order survived under a new name, the Order of Christ. A few claimed they crossed the Atlantic centuries before Columbus. No one could say for sure, because the Templars had built something that did not rely on walls or armies, but on knowledge, secrecy, and loyalty. Their network was a shadow kingdom, a realm without borders, laws without judges, roads without maps. And long after the last temple was burned, that shadow continued to move across history, leaving echoes in stone, signs in architecture, and questions that time itself could not silence. The dawn broke blood-red over Paris, but the city was already awake. On that fateful morning of October 13th, 1307, Friday the 13th, a silent army moved through the streets under cover of secrecy. Orders had been sealed, messengers dispatched in the dead of night, and by sunrise the hammer would fall. Across France, the king's men descended upon every Templar house, commandery, and outpost. What had once seemed unshakable was now trembling under the weight of royal betrayal. The most powerful military order of Christendom was under siege, not by heathens or Saracens, but by the very crown they once protected. King Philip IV of France, burdened by debt and hungry for power, had long resented the Templars. He owed them vast sums of money, loans extended to fund his wars, maintain his lavish court, and support his political ambitions. But more than the debt, it was the independence of the Templars that tormented him. They answered to no kingdom. They collected rents and taxes. They possessed castles that could withstand armies. And worst of all, they guarded secrets beyond the king's reach. With the help of his puppet pope, Clement V, installed in Avignon rather than Rome, Philip concocted a damning list of charges against the order: heresy, blasphemy, sodomy, devil worship, worship of mysterious head, spitting on the cross. These weren't just crimes. They were spiritual poison, enough to damn a man's soul and destroy his reputation forever. But were they true? On that cursed Friday, hundreds of knights were seized and thrown into dungeons. The Grand Master himself, Jacques de Molay, was taken, along with many of the highest-ranking Templars. Torture followed, brutal, unrelenting, and calculated. Hot irons, the rack, crushed limbs. Under the agony, men confessed to anything. They admitted to dark rituals, to renouncing Christ, to kissing strange idols. And yet, many of them recanted just as quickly when the pain stopped. Their captors didn't care. The confessions were written, the guilt was sealed, and the verdict was already decided. As the Templars rotted in chains, their assets were seized. Gold, land, and fortresses were handed over to rival orders or absorbed by the crown. But in many places, there was nothing. The treasure vaults were empty. The ships had vanished. The knights who were supposed to guard those troves were nowhere to be found. It was as if the Templars had seen it coming. Some historians believe they had. There were whispers of the Templars had moved their most sacred relics and riches out of France months in advance. A fleet of ships, anchored at La Rochelle, reportedly vanished days before the arrest orders were issued. Some say they sailed to Scotland, others to Portugal, and some believe they crossed the ocean itself centuries before Columbus. The truth is lost, but the silence remains thunderous. In the years that followed, the persecution intensified. Templar leaders were paraded before inquisitors in mock trials. The church tried to remain distant, pretending it had no part in the scheme, but the Pope's signature lay on the decrees. Under pressure, Pope Clement formally disbanded the order in 1312, not because they were proven guilty, but to preserve the unity of the church. In truth, it was a surrender to political power, but the Templars would not vanish without leaving a scar. On a cold March day in 1314, after 7 long years of imprisonment, Jacques de Molay was led to the stake on the Isle de la Cite in the heart of Paris. As flames licked at his robes, he raised his voice, not in agony, but in defiance. He declared his innocence. He forgave his tormentors. And then he issued a curse. He summoned King Philip and Pope Clement to answer for their crimes before the throne of God within the year. Within months, both were dead. Philip died of a stroke, Clement of illness. The legend of the Templar curse was born that day and would echo for centuries. With their leaders gone and their name dissolved, the surviving Templars disappeared into history. Some were absorbed into other orders like the Hospitallers. Others became farmers, monks, or mercenaries. But rumors persisted that a secret brotherhood lived on, carrying the old vows in silence, protecting relics, and preserving forbidden knowledge. Symbols began to appear, carved into cathedrals, hidden in manuscripts, etched into gravestones. The Templar cross, the equal-armed red cross, the 2 riders on 1 horse, and always the whispers of hidden treasure. Friday the 13th became forever cursed in the Western mind, a day of bad luck, misfortune, and betrayal. But few remember its origin lies in the burning flesh of knights betrayed by the crown they once served. It was not heresy that destroyed the Templars. It was politics, greed, fear. They had become too powerful, too mysterious, too independent for the world that sought control. What makes their fall so tragic is not just how they died, but how they had lived, devoted, disciplined, and dangerous to corrupt. They had once stood between chaos and pilgrimage, between sin and salvation. But when they were no longer useful to the powers of the world, they were discarded, their names blackened, their voices silenced. Yet in that silence, a story continued. A myth began, not of defeat, but of survival, not of shame, but of legacy. The Templars were gone, but not forgotten, and perhaps not even truly gone. In the ashes of that fire, something endured, a mystery, a secret, a question that refuses to be answered. Long after their order was shattered, long after the fires had burned out on the banks of the Seine, The legend of the Knights Templar refused to die. If anything, it grew stronger with every passing century. The men were gone, their castles seized, their banners torn. But something deeper remained, a legacy invisible yet indestructible, a question that haunted the pages of history. Did the Templars truly vanish, or did they simply change form? In the decades following their persecution, strange things began to happen. Symbols associated with the Templars began appearing in unexpected places, etched into stone cathedrals, painted in secret manuscripts, encoded in architectural blueprints. Churches built by unknown hands bore the Templar cross. Graves in remote regions carried markings only known to those who once knelt in silence before the rule of the temple. It was as though the order had dissolved in name alone, but not in spirit. One of the most compelling threads leads to Scotland. At the time of the Templar arrest, Scotland was excommunicated from a Catholic church. It was a land of political turmoil, open rebellion, and fierce independence. Perfect cover for fleeing knights. Some believe Templar ships that vanished from La Rochelle sailed to the western coast of Scotland, bringing with them not only treasures, but something far more potent, ritual knowledge. They're hidden from papal reach. They are thought to have allied with local nobility, including the powerful Sinclair family. In Rosslyn Chapel, built in the mid-15th century by Sir William Sinclair, stone carvings adorn every inch of the walls, many of which bear strange symbols linked to the Templars and ancient Jewish mysticism. The chapel's inner structure echoes not only Christian iconography, but also something older, more arcane. Some claim it was built to house the Grail. Others say it holds the scrolls the Templars found beneath Solomon's temple. The chapel has no definitive explanation, only layers of allegory carved in stone. It stands as a cathedral of riddles, possibly built by those who carried the torch of forbidden brotherhood. But Scotland was not the only sanctuary. In Portugal, the Templars found official protection. King Denis, sympathetic to their cause, offered them refuge and rebranded the order as the Order of Christ. This new name allowed the Templars to retain their properties, wealth, and influence, operating under a different title, but with the same structure. In later centuries, members of the Order of Christ would fund and guide explorers like Vasco da Gama and Henry the Navigator, men who carried the Red Cross on their sails as they opened the world to Europe. But the story doesn't stop with explorers and monarchs. In the 17th and 18th centuries, as Europe was reshaped by Enlightenment and Revolution, whispers of the Templar legacy emerged again, this time within the growing shadow of secret societies. Freemasonry, with its elaborate rituals, secret handshakes, and symbolic architecture, bore uncanny similarities to the Templar tradition. Many Masonic lodges claimed a direct spiritual inheritance from the Knights. Some degrees within Freemasonry even bore Templar names, and certain rites reenacted moments of the order's rise and persecution. Did the Freemasons simply borrow the imagery, or were they the descendants of a hidden Templar lineage? Some believe that when Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake, he passed his authority in secret to a successor, creating an unbroken chain of Grand Masters that continued in the shadows. The lore says that the Templar spirit lived on in lodge rooms rather than chapels, guarded not by swords but by silence. The conspiracy deepens in places like Washington, D.C., where the layout of streets, monuments, and buildings seem to follow Masonic, and perhaps even Templar geometry. The presence of Templar crosses, compass and square symbols, and pentagrams carved into government architecture suggests not a coincidence, but a blueprint of influence. Even on the U.S. dollar bill, the all-seeing eye above the pyramid evokes suspicions of a secret hand, one that guided not only faith, but also the birth of nations. But beyond the symbols and speculation lies a deeper question. What did the Templars pass on that was so worth preserving? Was it treasure? Ancient texts? A bloodline? Or was it something far more dangerous? A different view of history, of religion, of human purpose? Perhaps they carried knowledge that didn't fit the narrative written by kings and popes. Perhaps their survival was not about hiding gold, but about protecting truth. Today, modern groups claiming Templar descent exist around the world. Some are ceremonial. Others claim spiritual succession. Many bear little resemblance to the original order, but all exist because of the enduring mystique. The Red Cross, the image of two knights on one horse, the legacy of discipline, sacrifice, and mystery. It still captures the imagination. it still pulls at something deep within the human psyche. There are those who believe that the Templars guard their secrets still, bound by oaths that survive the centuries, that they exist among the powerful, the elite, the unseen architects of modern society. And there are those who believe they are gone, buried beneath ruins and forgotten texts. But history teaches us one thing. True power rarely dies with fire and sword. It slips into shadow. It waits. In the end, the legacy of the Knights Templar is not just a story of war or wealth. It is a story of survival, of how ideas and faith can outlast kingdoms and flames, of how a brotherhood forged in blood and belief could leave fingerprints on centuries to come. They may have vanished in the pages of official history, but in cathedrals, in symbols, in stone and silence, they remain. And as long as mankind seeks truth beyond what is told, the question will remain alive. Did the Templars really disappear, or did they become something more? They were hunted, tortured, erased from the pages of history, yet their symbols remain carved in stone, their whispers echo in secret halls, and their legacy lives on in places we'd never suspect. Were they destroyed, or did they become the architects of a hidden world order? The Knights Templar left behind more than ruins. They left behind questions, and we're just getting started. If you believe history still holds secrets, share, and join us on the next chapter History Vault, where the truth hides in the shadows.